So just one day before CNN will host the final Democratic Party primary before the Iowa caucus, they just so happened to conveniently stumble upon a controversial news story about a thing that Bernie Sanders reportedly said. Quote, Bernie Sanders told Elizabeth Warren in private 2018 meeting that a woman can't win, sources say. Now, the context is unclear. Is he saying that a woman isn't competent enough to win? Is he saying that a woman will have a more difficult path to the White House because there's a lot of sexism and anti-woman bias? I mean, we don't know. We don't know about the full context. Does it really matter? No, because CNN wants you to believe that Bernie Sanders was being brazenly sexist here in this conversation with Elizabeth Warren. So, who said this? Because it seems like the only two people who were in this meeting were Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. So which one of them is the one who spilled the beans? Well, according to CNN, the description of that meeting is based on the accounts of 4 people. 2 people Warren spoke with directly soon after the encounter, and 2 people familiar with the meeting. Oh, okay, so anonymous sources. How convenient. Now, rather than diving into the details of this story, I'm going to play a clip for you because, of course, CNN broadcasted this as well. So this is what the author of the story had to say.
Warren is blasting the Sanders campaign for reportedly giving volunteers a script to follow to denigrate her as a candidate, only appealing to the elite. But that may now be only part of the story between these two. Here with me now is CNN chief political analyst Gloria Borger and CNN political correspondent MJ Lee. And MJ, you have some new details about a meeting between these two, a long ago meeting before either of them joined the race. Tell us about this.
That's right. We have some new reporting on a private meeting that took place between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren in December of 2018. You can do the math on the timing of all of this. This would have been when both senators were both preparing to launch their 2020 campaigns. And the two met in Warren's Washington, D.C. apartment, and they discussed a couple of things. And here's what CNN learned. We learned that the two discussed the importance of staying civil and not going on the attack against one another if the two were to face off in the 2020 election. They thought that it was important to not undermine the progressive movement. We also have reporting that they discussed ways to beat Donald Trump, and that Warren told Bernie Sanders that 2 major reasons she thought that she would be a strong candidate was because she could mount a robust argument on the economy, and that she thought she could get broad support from female voters. Now, 4 sources tell CNN that Bernie Sanders responded to Elizabeth Warren by saying he does not believe that a woman can win. Now, we are also told that Sanders expressed some frustration about the role of identity politics for Democrats, and also that Elizabeth Warren disagreed with Sanders' assessment that a woman could not win. Now, the Warren campaign did not comment in response to this story, but Bernie Sanders has just sent this statement to CNN. I will read it in full. He says, "It is ludicrous to believe that at the same meeting where Elizabeth Warren told me she was going to run for president, I would tell her that a woman couldn't win. It's sad that 3 weeks before the Iowa caucus and a year after that private conversation, staff who weren't in the room are lying about what happened. What I did say that night was that Donald Trump is a sexist, a racist, and a liar who would weaponize whatever he could. Do I believe a woman can win in 2020? Of course. After all, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump by 3 million votes in 2016. So, Brianna, not only is Bernie Sanders aggressively pushing back, he is now accusing the Warren campaign of lying.
Well, it's interesting because the Warren campaign isn't commenting. Elizabeth Warren could say, no, that's not actually, the conversation hasn't happened. So that's really important to note that, Gloria.
Now, I don't know what Bernie Sanders said. Maybe he said something about sexism that is being misconstrued here. But what I do know is that I don't believe this story. I'm sorry, I don't believe 4 anonymous sources. First of all, because does anyone believe he would tell his future female opponent that she can't win because she's a woman? I mean, who would be dumb enough to do that? And second of all, I don't believe this because the 4 anonymous sources were not in the room with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Bernie's campaign manager, Faz Secure, confirmed that it was just them in the room.
Do you think we need to hear directly from Senator Warren on this?
Of course we do. We need to hear from her directly, but I know what she would say, that it is not true, that it is a lie. So I welcome her coming out and disputing this and putting this to rest. You have 4 anonymous sources who have commented on the story. I don't hate to get into a critique of the media here with the media, but these are the kinds of stories we get frustrated about. If you want to make an accusation of this caliber and this nature, then put your name to it. But you have 4 anonymous sources saying stuff that isn't true. There are only 2 people in the room. It was Elizabeth Warren, it was Bernie Sanders. They both believe that.
So I don't believe this because those 4 anonymous sources, as a matter of fact, were not in the room when Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren had this conversation. Furthermore, I don't believe it because it flies in the face of everything that Bernie Sanders has been saying. You see, the benefit of supporting a candidate with a 40-plus year record is that we have a lot of receipts that tell us what he actually believes. In fact, back in 1988, he said that he believed a woman can, in fact, win the White House.
The real issue is not whether you're black or white, whether you're a woman or a man. In my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States.
Yeah, and on top of that, here he is telling a classroom of young girls that they absolutely should run for president and participate in politics. In fact, they have a right to participate in politics as much as boys do.
Has there ever been a woman mayor?
Not in Burlington. There have been, and there are women mayors all over the country. There's a woman governor in this state. Who can tell me the name of our governor? Yeah?
I think it's Madeline Kuhn.
That's right, Madeline Kuhn. And Governor Kuhn is a woman. And there are other, not a whole lot, I think there's one other woman governor. There are the mayor of San Francisco is a woman, and there are many women mayors, but not enough. And one of the very important things, and I hope that all the girls in this class understand, that you, just as much as the boys, have a right to become president. There's not been a woman president, although there was a woman who was giving thought to running for president this time, from Colorado, a woman named Representative Schroeder gave some thought. So I hope that the girls will think that they have the right to be involved in politics quite as much as the boys do. It's beginning to change, but it's not changing fast enough.
So do you honestly believe that that person would tell Elizabeth Warren, his future opponent, to her face that she can't win because she's a woman? Absolutely not. So if this is based off of a real quote, assuming, the story isn't manufactured entirely, then there's no way that Bernie Sanders was being sexist. There's no way. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. These 4 anonymous sources can't be trusted. CNN cannot be trusted, who has shown disdain for Bernie Sanders in the past. And also, this is a day before the debate when they know that if they put Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on that stage and pit them against each other, that will be great for ratings. It also serves their agenda because that gives potentially Biden and Buttigieg a boost. So I don't trust anyone in this circumstance. The story stinks, and Elizabeth Warren is conveniently remaining silent because she knows this will hurt Bernie, and she also knows this isn't true. So, she'll eventually, I'm assuming, come out and say that this wasn't true, but why not just let the story, fester a little bit, hurt Bernie Sanders' chances, so maybe she kind of gets a boost, to the detriment of Bernie's campaign. And here's the thing, let's assume that this story were true for a moment. Well, as HuffPost writer Amanda Turkle points out, she reported just a month ago, Biden noted that part of the reason he's electable is that he won't face sexist attacks. Biden's campaign said that he wasn't trying to say that women are less electable than men, but he was listing ways that he will be able to beat Trump when Clinton can't, and he mentioned the unfair sexist attacks she faced in 2016. That's not going to happen to me, he said. So ask yourself this. Did you hear anyone in the mainstream media freak out about Biden saying this? Did CNN denounce what Biden said here? No. Now, we don't even know what Bernie Sanders said. We're basing this off of hearsay. But yet, this is incredibly controversial, and we should all believe that Bernie Sanders is sexist. That's the takeaway. So it's just dirty. There's a double standard, and that's if we believe that Bernie Sanders said that, but I don't believe that he believes that, and I don't believe that he would say this. Now, I want you to understand that this is all what we expected would happen. Back in December, when I talked about the polling data and how it showed Bernie Sanders was in fact surging and that the media was finally starting to pay attention, I predicted that this is something that would happen, not because, I'm some type of prophet, but because I've seen the media's tactics. This is the same thing that they've been doing for years to not just Bernie Sanders, but progressives in general. This is what I said. But once pretty much the CNNs, the MSNBCs, the Fox Newses of the world acknowledge that he is in fact leading and he has a real shot at the nomination, we will see a barrage of criticism that will be like anything we have ever seen before. Because if you thought that the smears of Bernie Sanders have been disgusting now, which they have been, you haven't seen anything yet. Because capital will not just, roll over and die. It's going to fight with everything it has. So if Bernie Sanders continues to surge, and if he makes a significant jump to where he starts leading in all of these primary states, once it's undeniable, they are going to pull out every single trick in the book, and people who you once thought were your allies are now going to be speaking out against Bernie Sanders, and they will reveal their true colors. They were only paying lip service to the movement, and they never really cared about the movement. We're going to see the media try to rehabilitate other candidates like Elizabeth Warren because, since she's now sliding and they see that Bernie Sanders is rising, they're going to try to present her once again as the progressive alternative. And I can't even fathom all of the different ways that, they're going to try to beat Bernie Sanders, but understand that that is what they will do. So as you can see, this is playing out exactly as I predicted it would. And the attacks on Bernie Sanders and the smears, quite frankly, have ramped up after the Des Moines Register released a poll that showed he was in first place in Iowa. Once that poll came out, a poll that is largely viewed as the gold standard and showed that Bernie was in first and Elizabeth Warren wasn't too far behind, that made pundits lose their mind because this poll shows that Bernie has a real shot if he can actually win Iowa. So buckle up because this is only the beginning. As I stated, they are not going to allow Bernie Sanders to walk and, just cruise on to the nomination without any level of resistance. They are going to fight him tooth and nail, and we're just seeing the beginning. But keep calm and understand that this is what we expected and anticipated, and we are all ready to respond because we have receipts. Don't get discouraged by these smears. Just canvass for Bernie Sanders, phone bank for Bernie Sanders, and, chip in a buck or two to help him here because, for every single thing that the media says about him, he's going to have to spend campaign cash to refute in an ad or something. Or he's going to take time off the campaign trail to have to respond so we can help Bernie Sanders overcome these barriers that the media will inevitably put up by stepping on the gas that much harder. Again, this is not something that should discourage us. It should encourage us to actually fight that much harder because we all knew these attacks were coming and now they're finally here and it's probably going to get a lot uglier than this. Expect a lot more stories from anonymous sources to say that Bernie Sanders is basically Satan. So before I cut the cameras, I decided to check one last time just to see and make sure Elizabeth Warren didn't respond because I want to include her response. And as I recorded this video, it does appear that she responded. So she released a statement, and this was given to us by someone named Kristen Orthman, who works for her. And this is her statement. Bernie and I met for more than 2 hours in December 2018 to discuss the 2020 election, our past work together, and our shared goals, beating Donald Trump, taking back our government from the wealthy and well-connected, and building an economy that works for everyone. Among the topics that came up was what would happen if Democrats nominated a female candidate. I thought a woman could win. He disagreed. I have no interest in discussing this private meeting any further because Bernie and I have far more in common than our differences on punditry. I'm in this race to talk about what's broken in this country and how to fix it, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. I know Bernie is in the race for the same reason. We have been friends and allies in this fight for a long time, and I have no doubt we will continue to work together to defeat Donald Trump and put our government on the side of the people. Wow, so she's saying, yeah, this report is actually true. So it's his word against hers. He's saying this is an outright lie. She's saying it's not a lie. Now, the good news is that most people can see, I think that Bernie Sanders wouldn't say something like this. One, because it's stupid, and two, because it flies in the face, as I stated, of all the things that he said, his advocacy for women in politics throughout the years. But the bad news is that even if I don't believe the average person will believe, this line of attack or whatever Bernie Sanders said in whatever context, the media hates Bernie Sanders more than they hate Elizabeth Warren. In fact, I think they like Elizabeth Warren, and they're going to believe her over him in this situation. So this is damaging. This is devastating. I can't believe this. And the fact that she is refusing to provide us with any additional context. What Bernie Sanders said, did she misconstrue it? Did they misconstrue it? I mean, you're not telling us anymore, really? It goes to show you that she wants Bernie Sanders to be damaged because of this, and she's not serious about helping the progressive movement. Otherwise, she would give us more information about this. This is absolutely ridiculous. Now, on top of that, while I was recording this, Sean King gave us some news. He actually has a source. He knows someone who talked to Elizabeth Warren, and understand this is hearsay, but this is what he says. Wow. Just spoke to a source who told me that Elizabeth Warren admittedly embellished the words of Bernie Sanders to her friends after her meeting with him in 2018, saying that Bernie said a woman couldn't win, but that he never actually said those words. Disgusting. So Bernie Sanders states that this was a lie. And then there is evidence now from people close to Elizabeth Warren, based on Sean King's tweet here, that Elizabeth Warren admitted that she lied. So I think that it's clear Bernie Sanders didn't say this, or he said something about women running for president and she misconstrued it or embellished, and she's misinterpreting it, and she's doing this because she knows that Bernie's loss is potentially her gain. She wants to get Bernie's progressive voters to jump ship and flock to her. But I don't think she realizes that the opposite is going to happen. This is driving people away from her, because as she continues to pivot to the center in this primary to appeal to centrists, as she moves away from Medicare for All, as she has this botched response to Soleimani, she's turning off Bernie Sanders voters. So anyone who was willing to support her before is getting even more and more driven away by this, because she accused Bernie Sanders of being divisive, and now here she is possibly lying about Bernie Sanders. Now, I don't know. I wish that she would actually be more kind and give us some additional context. If she believes that Bernie Sanders said this, and she genuinely believes that he said something like this, give us the context with which he was saying this. Tell us more. Do you genuinely believe, Liz, that he was saying this to be sexist? Do you believe his comment was sexist? We need more information. You're not giving us enough, and it's incredibly frustrating for you to say this and just leave us hanging now. So we have to wait, I guess, until the debate for you and Bernie to talk about this when you have 30 seconds each. I mean, it's preposterous. This is absolutely disgusting and slimy. Sorry, I don't believe Elizabeth Warren. I don't believe the person who lied about their Native American heritage. She is someone who is less trustworthy than Bernie Sanders. So I'm going to take his side until we can actually confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt. But it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to do that, because it's his word against hers. So I guess I'm going to have to default to the person who has been more reliable and doesn't get caught lying every other month. Bernie Sanders.